Today a super crucial episode because this vehicle here, this SUV, is a worldwide bestseller. And that's why this review matters to so many people and car buyers out there. And I really have to say, I have not become a car reviewer to drive some free Lambos or Bugattis or something like that, which might be motivation for others. For me, it might seem strange to some, but for me, it's more important to test the cars that people actually buy. That is actually my passion. And of course, then the Mazda CX-5 in the all-new generation also belongs to that. Today, we're going to compare it, this one here, the new generation, to the previous generation, which we recently got on purpose as a rental to get the fresh memory. How is the previous generation and how good is now the new generation? What have they changed? Because especially the interior has massive changes. Are they all good? Are also some bad changes maybe? And I can tell you the driving part will be especially interesting because the question is it still, from the driving feeling, a real Mazda? We're going to find out and also compare it a little bit to the VW Tiguan, which is the main competitor on the EU market, and also the Toyota RAV4, which is probably one of the main competitors on the worldwide market, especially in North America and so on. And everything of that you need to know now with Thomas and Autogefühl in 4K, full screen, full length. Let's go with the older generation CX-5 from Mazda, which has this new front face, which is not completely different. It's more like an evolution. Of course, there's a new light signature right here, which doesn't seem one line going through. It's more like one on top of the other, and I picked the white color here for today because in the studio we had the Soul Red Crystal, which is also a very beautiful color, and I also thought that my outfit works better with this vehicle because yeah, maybe it's the other way around. I don't have so many Soul Red Crystal colors in my wardrobe though. Then here the length, this is a crucial change, already 4.69 meters or 185 inches, which is 12 centimeters or 5.5 inches longer than before, and half of that translates into more legroom. So we're going to see about that if it works. Wheels start 17-inch in the base version, and then here the 19-inch if you don't have the base version. In this case then in the black design, which has this very cool contrast between then white and black. Also here the black wheel arches, for example. This one here, high trim vehicle, but as you know, also from our personal car purchase, I'm more a fan usually of mid trims, or maybe only pick like the extras you really need. Typical then SUV design, and the rear is new in the design as well with the new light signature here too. But again, it's more an evolution from the exterior design. And you can see real exhaust tips, so there's no job for the Autogefühl fake exhaust police. And you can see indeed these high gloss black contrasts are even more contrastish when you have something like this here, the rhodium white, as this white color is called. And new trend here, or I mean, maybe Toyota used to do that for a longer time with their commercial vehicles and pickups. Here, the lettering instead of the logos. That is a worldwide car trend for sure. This one here is available either with front-wheel drive or with all-wheel drive. We're driving the front-wheel drive version here today. In the EU specs, it's 10.9 seconds for the all-wheel drive, 10.5 seconds for the front-wheel drive in the acceleration figure. Soon more to this very, very interesting interior. All the info's delivered there. And when you hear these acceleration figures from this 2.5 liter four-cylinder engine, naturally aspirated, and there we go. Cylinder on demand technology, mild hybrid, 24 volt though, not 48. There it is, this 2.5 liter four-cylinder. I mean, it's good that it doesn't have a turbo because that is longer lasting, one piece that can't break, obviously. The North American version has more than 87 horsepower, so a little bit more boosty punch. But then again, maybe this MF system makes up a little bit for this lack of horsepower. Still, you gotta say, you see where the focus of this car is, and that is not the best performance. It's more like price performance. That's the focus of this vehicle, and we're also going to talk about the price later on, but I can already tell you so far, it has a good price performance. That was always the selling point for the CX-5. Very wide dampening, by the way, here. It's also, even wider than before. And NVH, so the noise, vibration, harshness, so the sound deadening and so on. This was also something they have worked on. And I can tell you, I will also focus on that in the driving part then later on. So For some, it might be underpowered, but we'll also test some accelerations, of course, on the motorway here in Spain for you today. And then what's also important as for suspension, so they have put some softer springs in there, but they also have frequency adaptive dampers. They are passively adaptive. They don't change according to the driving mode, but they're always passively adaptive. And I'm really looking forward to driving this one today to see how that one scores. Now to the interior with the key fob, and this is honestly, yeah, not good quality. Doesn't make a good impression, the key fob. It does the job. Then door closing sound is actually, well, not too good, not too bad. I would say it's like average. Let's take it that way. Then inside of the doors. This is here hard pack. Oh, that's really hard pack. At least it has some visual structure. Let's take it that way. Only soft part is here, but this is here honestly a cheap leatherette. You know, not with the not saying like that leatherette is cheap, but you of course have different kinds of quality. You know, and there's like high quality leatherette. The highest quality is used in luxury yachts for millions of euros. You know. But here, this one is not a good quality. And then here, what is actually nice is the window levers. They also have like this, yeah, shiny surface in this case, and they actually click nicely. The only thing is, there you hear that it's not like the super high expensive car, that the windows like, boom, they really hammer in like they're super fast and going like this first step, you know, where maybe premium manufacturers would have like a slower, smoother transition. However, something we even don't see with cars which are literally double the price, here in the front, and I asked Mazda explicitly for that. This is supposed to be for all lines, not optional. Acoustic windows in the front, here with the lamination, and that is astonishing for that price here. So, and I'm quite certain that this will make a huge difference when we drive on the motorway very soon and also rate the NVH and so on. So kudos to that. That's pretty cool. Hardback in the lower part then, so nothing really covered there. And then we have the all new cockpit here with the new steering wheel. These are capacitive buttons because this one button, there's one button left and one on the right, but it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, about 10 functions each button. At least it does give a clicking feedback. And so the feedback is nice, but it's one button for everything. Not the biggest fan of that, honestly. And also, once again, the scheme of let's write the company and let's not put a logo on there. What do you think about that? Soon more about instruments and the screen and so on. Then seats. This is here the optional animal skin in the highest trim. Base would be all the way black fabric. Then you can also get fabric on the inside, leatherette outside for the mid-trim levels. Then also in 2 colors. You can also get one with a little bit more bright white elements and so on. And I would also stick with the mid-trim level because yeah, here the surface is not the most comfortable. It's actually quite stiff. The ergonomics of the seats, however, is fine. So I would then go for the mid-trim level then and enjoy also a little bit more breathable comfort from this fabric seat. For these, however, you can also get the seat cooling. Then here, headroom, 1A9, 6 for 2. It's fine with that. Nice bright ceiling and also panoramic roof. And first of all, this sun cover, sunshade. And this is also still one you can actually open. And it's one of the options you can also get for this vehicle. And yeah, I mean, I'm happy that there's the knob, but it's not the most pleasant knob to feel, so to speak. It opens quite in an angle. You can see it right there, right? It's not so long, this opening, so it's a very short opening, but at least we still do have an opening. And manual control of the steering wheel, up and down, in and out, that's also totally fine. Now to the cockpit details. First of all, a small detail we recently experienced with our rental car from the previous generation, and I hope they fixed it for the new generation. Sometimes it's good to talk to taxi or Uber drivers or to rental companies, and then they say, these are the things that often broke with the vehicle. And because in our previous generation rental car, here on the passenger seat, the seat control, this one here, back and forth, was broken. And then they told me at the rental company, yeah, that happened to a couple of vehicles actually from the previous generation. Not sure if you can confirm that if you have a previous generation CX-5. I hope it's not the same mechanism, or I hope that they fix it for this generation. Let's see about that, but it's also good that you add in the comments when you have some experience with previous generation, or also when you watch this video at a later stage, that you can maybe give your experience from the only generation from a customer perspective. That's always very valuable here to our community, of course. Then this all-new cockpit. So much things to say about that. First of all, material-wise, this is, well, it's nothing's this is softer here, but the top part is a little bit softer. This is not too soft, but it looks soft. Let's take it that way. Then here the glove box is also dampened, but it's pretty tiny, just for some documents. That's it. And then we have to talk about this large screen and the user interface. This is here the top trimmable 15.6-inch infotainment. It's really large. Is it maybe too large for this car? Also how it's integrated here with the gaps, I'm not so sure about that. The base infotainment system, or let's take it that way, if you don't have the top trim, which is Homura in the EU and it's called, I think, Premium Plus in the US. So the other trims have the 13-inch screen, so the smaller screens. I think it should be the same logic in the North American market. I think that could even look better. So once again, I would probably go for the mid trim. Take the fabric seats, take the smaller screen. I think it will do the car well. Nevertheless, here's the camera view at the moment. You can also, like, do it here. The other door is open, that's why it looks weird here, but this side door is closed. It's not, you see, it's not the biggest processing power behind it. Let's take it that way. Soon more deals to the screens, because it's also interesting that you have actually here then a native Google Maps support plus CarPlay or Android Auto if you like so. Then the steering wheel, as I said before, it's actually, nice feeling to it. You also have shifting pedals if you want to use these. 6-speed automatic gearbox, always like that. There is no manual. Fairly large middle console. In the front you have adaptive cup holders, two-way adaptive. I think that should be enough. And some cubby hole in the front there. Then you have electric park brake. And some clean space here for your phone. There's an inductive charging pad here. This is actually better quality at the outside. This is what I mean here. So by the leather red quality is better here on the inside than on the outside. And then you have this split opening, probably inspired by Mercedes. And you can store all this clutter and smartphones here. One is the USB-C connector, but you could also connect with wireless, it's also possible. And the other USB-C slot is just for charging, but they're actually quite powerful, so the phones are charged quite quickly, and I always prefer the cable charging. And we definitely already have to talk about this. So this is how you can change the temperature. Yes, theoretically also with voice control, but the thing was here, 2-zone AC. Mazda has always been about, we are still the manufacturer that does buttons and knobs and everything. And now with all their new models, they delete it. And that's a problem, I think, because especially the Mazda customers went for the Mazda vehicles because they were a little bit more conservative in the user interface. And that was a good thing in that case. Yeah, so I'm a little bit sad that we lost the buttons to control everything. And I don't think it's a good decision. And we see that manufacturers are going back to that. Even Volkswagen, they have recognized the problem. Listen to your feedback. We give your feedback to the manufacturer, then tell them also what we personally think about it, of course. And now Volkswagen is going back to physical dials. And recent news is also that the Chinese government will say the cars will require to have mandatory buttons for certain functions. Although it was, like on the Chinese market, these cars were pushing the buttonless solutions. And of course, it's also, let's say, a Lex Tesla, so it rule against Tesla a little bit, because Tesla was taking it, I think, too far with removing everything button-wise. And now it's becoming to be regulated. Also, Euro NCAP is doing something similar, So we will be going back to an age where certain functions will be activated with buttons and turning knobs again. Not everything, but there where it makes sense. So on the one hand, sad to see that go. Gotta say though, they have kept it visually, let's say, clean, that you can still easily achieve that. And you still have these, let's say, half buttons at the steering wheel where you still find everything. And there's one thing, one button at least, which is very important, and they thought of that, and it's actually left next to the steering wheel. And I mean this button here, left next to the steering wheel, press it once and the EU speed chime warning is off. Then the driver POV, once again here with these buttons, this is where you change here how the digital instruments look like, and you can also change the driving mode here from normal to sport mode. Then it turns red like this, and you can also have different layout if you like. And then we also have a head-up display, hard to see, but it's actually quite present. And with the infotainment system, main menu looks like this. Special thing is here that we now have native Google Maps support. So that's inbuilt in the vehicle. I think also a good decision. But you can also have your Google Maps or whatever map app from the Apple CarPlay. By the way, the screen is not flickering. That's just happening on camera here now. Here, good integration from the Apple CarPlay. That's nice. You also have here some vehicle setting, but not sure if this is like, I hope it's pre-production because it doesn't look that good in the visualization. And here once again with the climate unit, camera system is right here. You can also scroll like this, and you also have this transparent bonnet view. To activate the seat heating actually only works when the car is running from the engine. So here cooling and steering wheel heating, and then here you have an options menu where you can also then control all the rest of the vehicle settings. Now to the rear seats, and first of all, look at that here. The door basically opens almost 90 degrees. That's actually pretty cool for installing child seats in and out, and also just to get in and out of the car in a very comfortable way. That's cool. Then here you can see this is all hardback. At least it is somewhat visually structured here. You don't have the lamination in the rear, but I mean, come on, in this price segment, it's great that we have it in the front already. Then also a little bit softer here for your elbow. Yeah, maybe not the best quality overall, but still at least soft. No cover here. And then the rear seats ISOFIX outside each. Then we can put down this, some rubber lips here. What's actually quite cool is here, we can put this one down as a ski hatch. And also there's an inclination change here for more like upright position and a little bit more backwards. So yeah, not too much change, but at least you have this flexibility. And yeah, even more higher class premium cars often do not have that anymore. Then 2 USB-C chargers in the lower part, and seat heating would also be an option for the rear seats. And that's the thing here with the increased wheelbase, you now have way more legroom in the rear in comparison to the previous generation, and it's actually decently comfortable here. Also enough headroom here with one A9 6'2". I like this bright headliner here, for example. That's cool. Headliner at the festival, you know. Yeah, I think it's pretty good. And if you compare it especially to the CX-60, then you really might say like, hey, wait a minute, the CX-60 doesn't have more space, actually rather less space also in the rear. And yeah, we'll also compare the trunk now. Now to the trunk or the boot, which is at 580 liters, which is 60 liters more than before. So that's actually good. So you see that half of that extra length went into the trunk. This like, you know, like a no rails the side cover. I think it's fine. This one still fits vertically. This one here, by the way, is now also 10 liters more than the Mazda CX-60. That's also interesting, right? And here a mirror of 40 inches, even a little bit more than that, you can see, and even wider than here in these arches. So that's actually good. Then the length is almost a mirror or 40 inches. Underneath, in this case here, the Bose sound system. Otherwise, there would be more space, but of course, it's nice to have that the Bose sound system as well. Then it's also not like a everyday feature. You can have this remote unlock. It depends if it works on the seat belt here. So sometimes, you know, when the seat belt is under tension, then it doesn't fold. So there we go. Once again. And then I think I have to help them a little bit here. There we go. And what I'm also positively surprised about this here, they fixed a little bit of this transition. So it's something that I have been criticizing also with their larger SUVs recently, that this transition area wasn't that beautiful. Now it's definitely already better with this vehicle here. And then here, the total length to the seat as I'm driving is then here at 1 meters, almost 180 in meters or 70 inches. Then you also have these hinges here. So also you can fix some stuff. And last but not least, the height total height. And here we are at 31 inches or a little bit less than 80 centimeters. So overall, that's really good and makes you wonder indeed, considering also the extra price for the CX-60, why you would need a CX-60 still. Yeah, maybe for the buttons on the interior, you know, but space-wise, definitely not. As I said in the intro, didn't become a car reviewer for the free Lambos, but for the details of everyday cars. And this is what I love. Here, look at that. This is here the cover, which you can take out, and they have some felt stickers on top of that. Why is that so important? Because here, there's now the full setup. When you put this one here in, and you maybe know it from some cars, when it's also just plastic, you know, here, then you scratch all the way, everything. And here, when it's like felt covered, you don't collect scratches here, left and right. So once again, I mean, this is like really, I can just keep applauding that. For this is such an easy solution. And maybe in production, it's cost like 0.5 cents or something like that. There's absolutely no economic reason not to do it, but it helps so much that the car still keeps looking good. Let's go. Ooh. So that was 4280 with the all-new Mazda CX-5. We have the 2.5 liter 4-cylinder naturally aspirated engine now with mild hybrid. One more time. Now we can do 60 to 100. Let's go. That's it. Yeah, I mean, I would say it's still okay. I would have imagined that it's actually worse, because when you hear this horsepower figure for the European market of 141 horsepower, you're thinking, the North American one has 187 horsepower. So that sounds a little bit better, definitely. Yeah, but at least you have this. At least you have this hybrid boost a little bit, and then also probably some efficiency gains, hopefully out of that. I will also zero out the consumption meter now, that we can give you like a more realistic figure as for that. So yeah, I still think a car of that size could have a little quicker acceleration. It's 10.5 seconds here for this front-wheel drive version. Also makes me rather not pick the all-wheel drive version, because that is at 10.9 seconds in the acceleration figure. But as I said, I would have imagined that it's maybe worse. If you have this speed chime thing, by the way, you can just here press one button for this EU law, and then it's shut off. That is great customer service, basically, because people do demand that. Great grip here from the steering wheel, and it's actually a very likable steering feeling. That is indeed Mazda-esque, because there was the big question, how much Mazda is there still in this vehicle? And the steering is so important to have that indeed. One more time, we can do 75 to 120. There we go. I would say it's okay, right? Yeah, so I think you can live with that. You know, for the German Autobahn, going on the German Autobahn, of course, it's always better to have a little bit more punch. But
it's
I think
silent.
It's not too late.
Yeah, it's fine.
You feel
that,
that,
over us,
plane over us here close to the airport in Barcelona, and there is the dual insulation, like this laminated glass, and you feel that, wow. And we actually explicitly, because we had like this event with Lotus recently, and then on the airport as a rental, we picked the CX-5 from the previous generation, that we know, hey, we still have that experience for you. I reset the trip meter again, by the way, because we did another acceleration now. That was sport mode, by the way, and now going back to normal mode. So we picked the CX-5 in the previous generation, that we can have like this fresh memory. And indeed, this probably what Leah said is the biggest difference. It is way more silent than the previous generation, I feel. So that's a cool thing, definitely. And I also really like the steering feeling. That was also good in the older one. However, what I do notice now is that it's more direct. So it feels a little bit sportier. And the steering wheel itself is actually pretty cool. Yes, the buttons here have become part capacitive. At least you still get some kind of feedback when you press it, and also a clicking sound, even though it's for the whole button. So it's so good feedback and good clicking sound and feedback, but not like individual. But you can understand, at least you can better clean that, you know, like in the individual buttons. Let's say it that way. So pros and cons. But here, like how you turn the car feels really, really good. How do you feel?
Good.
It's good, yeah?
And suspension is also good.
Yeah, suspension makes a good...
I'm really impressed.
Because, yeah, what they did is they made the suspension on the one hand a little bit softer from the springs, but then they also have the frequency adaptive dampers, so they cannot be actively controlled, so it won't change when they go into sport mode. But they are passively adaptive, so to speak, all the time. And so far, I think they found a very nice setup here. So when we have some waves, it evens that out very well. At the same time, the car doesn't shake up too much. Little
not
bit,
too much, yeah.
You know, you feel it is rather a softer setup. So it's not something you say, hey, let's go racing. It's more something you would say, let's all relax here, right? Everybody be cool. You be cool. But we will also do like, you know, winding corner test for you, of course, very soon to find out more about that. And of course, then it's always important, is Leah getting sick by that or not? And cars where I do like the winding corner stuff and Leah is still feeling well, that's then always the Leah stamp for the vehicle, basically.
Leah sickness.
Yeah, the Leah non-sickness stamp, basically, yeah. Yeah, so far, I mean, I'm really impressed of what this car is delivering for that price point. Even more so, of course, if you go for the entry-level version, because yes, the manufacturers always try to sell you all the equipment, but we don't need the animal skin seats, we don't need the biggest screen. Even you saw that when we ordered our own car, we try to be efficient. That's what we Germans do, right? You know, also efficient in the ordering of cars, that you don't order something you don't actually need, you know. So, and that's the cool thing about this vehicle here. When you get the entry-level version, or let's say probably like the sweet point is a mid-trim for this vehicle, that you get the most important features, but you don't automatically get the features that you don't really need, you know. And then you also don't jump too high in the price. I mean, we talk about the price in the final conclusion, but just think about this. Yes, as it stands here right now, like 45,000 euros in Europe or something. But that's still, in comparison to the competitors, not too much. And if you now think then about the entry price, which is then at 30,000 dollars North America and 35,000 euros in Germany, that's incredible, actually, in comparison to the other competitors. When you think about that, the VW Tiguan we had last year as a test vehicle, or the year before that, was like fully equipped, 75,000 euros. Crazy. Yes, they have stronger engines, but still, you know, this is a vehicle that you drive every day, and you know, you're on the motorway, quicker, less quick, you do this and that, load stuff in, and for that it's really good, actually. So yeah, once again, I'm impressed how much more refined it's driving. So when we were recently having this rental, I thought like, yeah, okay, it's a budget car. You know, that was my impression. And I think Leah got the same impression for that, you know, from the rental. But now, yeah, I mean, maybe a BMW drives sportier. Yes, of course, you know, and it's also double the price probably, you know. But here, you don't immediately get the impression, you know, it's just a budget car. So because it feels actually quite refined. So that's actually cool. So to me, in driving, it actually, at this point, before the Agile driving, so far it over-delivers. So it delivers more than I expected, and it delivers a larger change from generation to generation. And yes, all the Mazda fans, including me, we were and we are still disappointed that we don't have so many physical dials. And I think that's also the wrong way for Mazda to go. So that was, you know, setting the bar a little bit lower, because there was some disappointing stuff with this vehicle, yes. Just from, you know, static stuff. But then again, you also have good things already static. And then in driving, yeah, probably is once again one of the best things. And that was also the crucial thing if you now think about their larger SUVs, CX-60, 70, 80, 90, where customers were somewhat disappointed with some things not functioning, especially with the plug-in hybrid system. Yes, there were some updates meanwhile. Also the suspension Also, they updated some things. Meanwhile, it's a little bit better. But the larger SUVs, they never caught up with the original Mazda driving feel. What they call Jin by Itai, like this unity of horse and rider, which is translated into unity then here of driver and car. And that is, when you drive an MX-5, it's always there. But it was also there with the CX-5 because it's a compact SUV, but it's still fun to drive. And I'm so glad it's still the case with this one. This car really feels connected, when you do the lane change and so on, that's really fine, that's a cool thing, definitely. Let's now, before we leave the motorway, check out the assistance systems. Easily set here with the cruise control on the right side of the steering wheel. Also with the active lane keeping assist. So far so good. No nervous corrections and so on. There's also blind spot monitor. Have this yellow triangle there in the side mirrors. So first impressions from the assistance systems seems also quite refined. In the previous generation, maybe I wouldn't have used it too much, but here, this is also one level above that. So also assistance systems wise, it seems to be paying off. Of course, we have to test it then, later on in a more thorough way, but that is a good first impression. And also how you have here, that's, just a little bit on the brake then to cancel these systems. And then this transition between assisted driving and driving yourself, it's also, of course, always something. Well, I'm also on experience because we had this first transverse bump. So far the road was maybe rough tarmac. What is here the characteristic thing in like the Barcelona area? However, what is when the road is really like destroyed? As we recently experienced also with Lotus then in Hethel, like the North England region. Actually, when I'm talking about this, I think this episode is airing earlier than the Lotus, right? Which can make you actually even more excited for the Lotus episode. Special, unique Lotus episode that is coming up actually. But I mean, if you watch this video here a couple of days later, then both episodes will be online anyways. So now I want to drive a little bit more agile and also see if we can find some bumps and destroyed stuff and so on. There we go. Yeah, also like when it's really silent here also, right? I love that, like, just to see that you feel the difference. Yeah, it's not too loud outside, but just the difference in here now is really, then it's like silent. The only thing is, which is not silent, I told you that in the interior part, that is something you might only expect when the car is double the price. Only here now, destroyed road, yes. Bang. But
Fine.
it's not too bad though, right? So here when you lower, someone there, hello? When you lower the window, it's like it hammers in, whereas some double the price vehicles, they would maybe lower it in a smooth way. But then again, as I said, if you pay half the price for that, you might as well easily live with that, right? Here, by the way, also situation where the road is a little bit, old Range Rover, where the road is a little bit more narrow. It is not a super large SUV, right? It has become larger in the length, but it's also not too wide. So when you have situations like these, almost as I would have ordered this car to come down, right? No, I did not. It was coincidence, but planned coincidence, so to speak. But still, like, it's not the widest SUV, and that also makes it so much more suitable for like a wider customer group because it's not too large, it's not too small. Some might say maybe it's now too long for them, but then again, you profit from this more legroom in the rear, which is also significant. So I think it's still fine, as for that. So now we start with the cornering, and also we're going uphill. Yeah, needs to shift down for that. 6-speed automatic gearbox, but gearbox not too bad so far. So I think this MF system, evens out that lack of horsepower maybe a little bit then here. Whoa, that was, yeah. I would say like the larger the car is, the quicker they drive. Yeah, but it's sometimes it's destroyed road, and here got some serpentine roads up ahead. Can't drive too fast here though, because it's not allowed. But when the corners are really tight here, good steering feeling. Yeah, here again shifting down. Yeah, this is where I feel that the engine doesn't have so much power, and I'm not too much on the throttle though, you know, because that would be maybe stressing the engine also a little bit. I don't want to do that, you know. It's also not comfortable, also not for the passenger and so on. So that's maybe the only thing when you're really driving uphill, where you then feel, it could have more power here. But at least the automatic gearbox shifts down early enough. Let's take it that way. Oh, sunglasses, obviously like deer in Espanol. I didn't know that, you know. So always trying to pick up some Spanish language, you know, maybe also for our Autocentración fans of our Spanish language channel. Yeah, maybe I should also watch my Supercross races now on the Spanish broadcast. They also do that. Great commentators there. Looking over to Leah. Is she still?
Yeah.
She's fine. She's fine. So
It's okay, yeah.
that's good so far. So let's also see now here when we're going from left and right intentionally. Yeah, yeah. That you feel that's not the specialty of this vehicle, because the suspension is also soft, that you have comfort on straight motorway. So if you ask yourself, is there anything I don't get for a more reasonable price? You still have driving fun in, let's say, when you drive it in a normal way. But if you really want to have a very sporty SUV, which you can also push in the corners, then it's maybe something that you don't get. But you get everything else for a reasonable price, you know. So that's why we're here to tell you what to expect and what not to expect. But when you think about that, you can live with the lack of horsepower and the lack of sportiness, then it's actually still like such a great bargain, you know, for what you pay and what it delivers. And yeah, once again, the main difference to the previous generation, I would say more refinement, feels a little bit, you know, like a class above that. Other competitors, as I said, in Europe, VW Tiguan, you gotta say that the Tiguan drives way more agile. So here I would say I'm fine with driving slow, and I also, as a driver, don't feel the urge to drive much faster, honestly. With the Tiguan, I said, like, I would still feel fine driving like double the speed, or maybe even more here, even if it's not loud. That's the point. That's the point, right? The Tiguan has this dual valve DCC adaptive suspension, optional, of course. So the Tiguan definitely drives better, you know, especially with the DCC, with the adaptive suspension and so on. Also fantastic car, but then again, recent test vehicle, as I said, yeah, almost double the price than this one. Already like the VW, not only the BMW or Mercedes or so on. So that's the thing. And Toyota RAV4. So, they don't seem to be happy with their discussion at the moment. So the Toyota RAV4, we will soon drive the all new generation, because with Toyota, it was so far the case that, especially on the motorway, driving faster, they were not really silent, you know. But I can't comment on the all-new generation from the Toyota so far. What we do know, that we have more buttons with the Toyota RAV4 still, so a little bit more maybe conservative approach, which we used to have with Mazda. And what I can already tell you from like sitting in the vehicle, that the RAV4 feels more larger SUV, whereas the CX-5 feels a little bit more non-SUV car-like in comparison to the RAV4. That's I can already tell you. Yeah, but soon more than to that, when we drive the RAV4 in the all-new generation, that is coming very soon as well. And if you watch this episode at a later stage, you might already find the video for that. But in general, I think for the price you pay, again, it's a nice drive. I'm finding it hard to find any other car that has this good price-performance ratio, and I think the driving part still confirms that. Now, when we finished like the serpentines, where I was driving like calm and slow, still fine. Yeah. Okay, so that speed is then
when it's not too fast,
yeah,
then it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And also when we have some bumps, it's fine. Definitely, suspension is set on the comfort node, and I think for that vehicle and for what it's being used, I think that's definitely fine. At the same time, at least from the steering input, from the steering feel, you still have this, you know, this sporty Mazda sense, you know. So yeah, overall, when you know what the limitations are, I think we can be very happy with the drive here. 7.4 liters on 100 kilometers, 32 mpg US, approximately 39 mpg UK. This is our result for today with some city driving using the MF system and also going motorway, 120 kilometers an hour, 70 miles an hour, something like that. And yeah, I mean, that is close to what they officially announce. You can also use this new technology then to your advantage. Of course, it's not like a true full hybrid where the consumption would be lower. So I think still quite okay from the result. Can always be more efficient, but considering what we did with that, yeah, and for a 2.5 liter engine, I think it's actually okay. Or what do you think about that? So the entry prices again, 30,000 US dollars for North America, 35,000 euros for the German entry price, for example. And then if you add some equipment, you can maybe add some $10,000 or euros as equipment, then you maybe end up with 39,000 US dollars or 46,000 euros if you then also have the overdrive version and so on. But you can also stay a little bit below or between the entry and the top price if you pick like an intelligent mid-trim level, which I would go for. So I would go for mid-trim, then fabric seats fabric inside, leather red outside. Not the biggest screen, so but the one size smaller, which is probably more elegant in the interior. And then you can really like hit a very sweet spot where you don't pay too much money, but already get a lot, you know, of car. So, I mean, it looks good from the outside. The interior, you know, even more refined, I would say. Yes, we do lose buttons. I don't agree to that. However, you can still control this car fairly easy. Gotta say that. I like the gain of legroom in the rear with this, you know, a little bit longer car overall. And it is a car that you can do everything with, you know. If you get this car, for anyone out there, everyone can do something with this car, you know what I mean? So it fits basically in all kinds of life situations, and at the same time, it doesn't cost too much. So it's still one of the best price performance SUVs out there. In brackets, if you don't maybe pick the highest trim level, so on. Equally from the price, somewhat in the region, is of course also the Toyota RAV4, which will soon drive in the all-new generation. You can also compare the previous generation. And of course, competitor here, especially in Europe, would also be still the VW Tiguan. More expensive though, but still, you know, checking the leasing rates and so on, that's always something different than the list price. What do you think about this all-new CX-5? Tell me in the comments.